Hey guys, welcome back to Container Crops, the Scaredy Cat Gardener. It is a beautiful day here in Zone 7B. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today we're going to be talking about the maturity date versus the harvest date that we see on the back of our seed packets. It can be confusing, maturity, harvest, what is what and why is it that way? And there's also a trick that you can use these numbers to maximize the productivity in your garden.
Show off your fantasy reality, whoa, that's yours, but I'll keep doing mine. You'll be living your good life, catch a glimpse from the outside all the time.
Okay guys, we are back, and if you are new to the channel, welcome. If you are returning, thank you so much for stopping back in. I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys. Do me a favor, take a second and subscribe to the channel. Turn on that notification bell so you won't miss anything. Don't forget to go over to my Facebook group, Container Crops, and connect to me over there. I'd like to see what you guys are harvesting, what you're planning, what's going on in your zone and in your garden. Feel free to post your videos so other people can watch them too. Also, you can always find me on IG, the Scaredy Cat Gardener. Okay, I think we've taken care of our yard work, so let's get into this. What exactly is maturity versus harvest date on the back of our seed packet? Okay, so first off, let me just say that the information on the back of the seed packets, the companies that are producing these packets, they are not trying to be deceptive. They're not trying to be confusing. So what does it mean when it says mature in 90 days or harvest in 90 days, but it took 120 for my plant to be ready? Or vice versa, they said 120 days and I look up in 60 days and it looks like this plant is ready. Why is that, and exactly what does that mean? Okay, let's first explain maturity versus harvest. The maturity of a plant typically refers to when you can harvest the plant, when it has set fruit or flowers and you can harvest the plant, versus harvest is typically when you probably should at the latest go ahead and make sure that plant is harvested. For an example, a tomato, you can harvest it as soon as it becomes mature. It's mature when it sets fruit and you see the first color come in. You can pull that tomato off of the vine. It will continue to ripen inside. It is mature. It's not going to get any bigger. It's not going to get any better. The only thing is the color will continue to change and produce. Now you can leave it on the vine until it's beautifully red, like my shirt. It's beautifully red, beautifully red and nice and ripe, or you can bring it in and let it do it. So the maturity of it is typically when the flowers and the fruits set in, and the harvest is when it's completely ready, and if you don't get it, it's going to start to decay from there. Most seed packet companies and people pretty much use the maturity date and the harvest date as interchangeable. But typically speaking, your maturity date goes from when you actually your plant has actually germinated. So if you're dropping seeds directly in the soil outdoors, once that germinates, say your packet says it takes 10 to 14 days to germinate. Well, once you see it coming up out of the ground, if it says harvest or maturity at 60 days, you're to count from the date it has germinated. In other words, it's poked its head through the soil and you can see a plant, and 60 days from that it should be mature, and then you can harvest it after it completely ripens. So that's pretty much the difference in the maturity date and the harvest date, and you go by when it is germinated. Now, if you are starting your seedlings inside, that same maturity date starts when you take that seedling outside and plant it in the soil. And at that point, your maturity date or your harvest date starts. So it says harvest in 120 days or ready to harvest in 120 days. It's 120 days from when you planted your seedling, not when you started the seed indoors. Another way to think of it is if you buy your starters from a store, it's going to have a little tag in it. It's going to say the same thing. Ready to harvest in 90 days, ready to harvest in 60 days. Well, you have to go by the date that you plant it. So think about that. You have to, because you don't know when that seed was dropped. You don't know how long that plant was started as a seedling. You don't know how long it took to germinate. So the only thing you can go by is when you plant it. So the same thing applies when you drop a seed in the soil. It's after germination. So if you've been counting your maturity date, your harvest date, from the date you drop that seed and thinking in 60 days it's going to be ready, and 60 days is not, now you have another night, not another 90 days, but maybe another 10, 15, or 30 days before it's ready. This is why. Now there are a few other things that go along and affect that as well. Also, you have to think about the conditions under which you are planting, be it direct soil or seedlings when you transplant your seedlings. Because we are in different zones, the thing about it is the packets are going to say the same for zone 5 as it is for zone 10. If you're in California and you have a packaged seed by the same company that I have a packaged seed from, or somebody maybe in Alaska has it, your packets are going to say the same thing. However, if you're in California, you're dropping your seed or planting your seedling in a much warmer condition, maybe a much sunnier condition, and that heat and that sun is going to germinate faster, and it may even produce faster and grow faster, and boom, your harvest may be there. But somebody in a colder climate doesn't mean you can't grow it. But you're not planting under the same conditions, so yours may take 3-4 months, but the packet said 60 days. But the packet companies can't produce different packets for every single zone. So the packet, no matter where you live, is going to say the exact same thing. Another example would be our brassicas. Now, they can be planted in the spring and in the fall, and they'll do just fantabulous. However, if you plant them in the spring, you may find that they grow a lot quicker, and in the fall, you may say, man, this is taking a long time. Come on now, you're trying to hurry it up. But the thing about it is when you're planting in the spring, or you have longer days, you have sunnier days, and the temperatures are pretty much warmer. So your seed may germinate a little bit faster, and then you may need to put it in a shady spot because it is a cool weather crop. So it takes a little bit more warmth and everything to germinate that seed, but then as it germinates, it needs coolness. So the conditions matter. If you're planting that brassica, brassicas, your cabbages, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, broccoli, all collard greens, brassicas, all of those. If you plant them in the fall, you have shorter days, less sunlight, and the sun may not come upon your garden at the right time of day or for the right length of time that it needs for that seed to germinate. So it may take a little longer. That's why I'm in zone 7B. I typically have a much longer growing season than a lot of places. I'm kind of like in the middle of the road. As an example, I just recently, like a couple of weeks ago, I dropped both cherry tomato seeds directly in my soil, and I also dropped beefsteak. Now, my cherry tomatoes are probably going to be ready in about 60 days, but that beefsteak is not going to be ready for about 90-95 days. But this is the middle of July. So I've got the middle of August, the middle of September, the middle of October. Now, it does get cold here sometimes in October, but a tomato will do fine as long as it stays above freezing. So if I'm in the upper 30s, my beefsteak is still going to produce and do fine. It depends on the conditions under which you plant these seedlings and drop these seeds. That's why the agricultural field typically depends on the heat index to determine their dates, their harvest dates, their maturity dates. But with everything that I've said, there are benefits to knowing these dates. The best example I can give you as a benefit to knowing these dates to make a better productive garden is, let's just use tomatoes again as an example. If you live in a zone that has a shorter growing season and you want to grow tomatoes, it would be to your benefit to know which variety of tomato has a maturity date of 60, 50, 90, 120 days, whatever it may be, because you have a shorter growing season. I have a pretty much longer growing season. So as an example, an early girl tomato, it typically is going to be mature, ready to harvest in about 50, maybe 55 days. As a beefsteak will be ready in about 90, 95 days. So if you live in a climate or a zone that has a shorter growing season, you're going to want to plant that early girl. You don't want to plant that beefsteak. Me, I can plant both. You know, I can plant that beefsteak. So knowing those dates helps you can pick the variety of vegetables and fruits and even flowers that you want to plant. Okay guys, so that's going to do it for today. Just remember that when it comes to the maturity date and the harvest date, things like the example I just gave you with the early girl and the beefsteak, it doesn't matter what zone you're in, it doesn't matter where you live. That early girl tomato is going to be at its maturity state and ready to harvest before the beefsteak. So use these numbers to determine, do I have a shorter zone? Do I have a longer zone? What's my best variety so I can maximize and have an amazingly productive garden? Thank you all so much once again for coming and hanging out here with me today. I really do appreciate each and every one of you guys. Again, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Give the video a thumbs up and share it out. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people, especially new gardeners, that are confused by this, when this is going to mature, or reading it and then it doesn't happen when the packet says. So now what do? Do I wait and keep letting it go? It says it's supposed to be mature. Do I pull it? And one more tip before I get out of here. If you have an abundance of a harvest of anything and you're not quite sure if it's ready to be harvested, but the packet says 60 days and maybe you're at 65 or 70 days and you're looking at it and you're like, I don't know if it's really ready. On one hand it looks ready, on another hand it doesn't. Do not harvest your whole entire crop. Don't do that, people. Please don't do that. Harvest one or two. Take it inside, eat it, prepare it, cook it, whatever you plan to do with it. See how it tastes, see how it feels, see how it smells, see how it looks, and go from there. Okay guys, until next time, remember, anywhere you can sit a pot, you can grow a plant. And I'll see you on the trail.
You'll be living your good life, catch a glimpse from the outside all the time.